Okay, sorry about that, guys. So today's call is about custom reports or reporting functions in Workamajig. If you have any questions, go ahead and place those into the webinar. Again, I have you all on mute, so again, unfortunately, it's going to be you typing. I'll be reading part of the thing. And so again, we'll just start with kind of the basics, and then we'll go into a little bit of advanced. But again, once it comes to advanced reporting, I usually recommend that, again, you try and create it, and then you can always send your requests into support at Workamajig, and we'll kind of give you how to create those more advanced features, kind of a little more one-on-one, and then we can show you some tricks that you can kind of put into your library for future use and reporting, okay? So as a beginning, so let's kind of start kind of in the at the start. Most people would have certain access to the system. One of those would be, for example, when I come into, I'm just kind of hiding my way. If I come into the global search, there's going to be a list of views, and these are kind of our standard reports that are in the system, and many times you should be able to edit those, okay? Most of the things that we're going to be talking about are kind of like if I go to Project Manager, today PM, and we look at the views, and again, for example, I go to projects and I go to all projects, and you say, well, I want some information. Again, what's in here is standard, may not be, again, what you're thinking of, right? Or what you want to look at. So if you have the security right, there will be a modify, and I can show you where those security settings are. We'll go to modify, and this is where we'll see the columns. And so how do I add a new column? I simply click into insert row and can either use the space or start to type, for example, amount billed, right? And if I learned how to type, amount billed or something like that, and that's how I add it in. Once I add it in, I can drag it to the location that I want it to be, okay? I can also group things. Again, if maybe this is since it's a project, a better way of seeing that would be maybe by client name. So I can kind of see those things. So if I say client name, okay, there we go. And then the other thing, and then from there, I can basically say apply changes. And from there, when I do a search on it, again, it's going to be grouped in the way I wanted, and also, again, provide the columns that I want, okay? New feature in Platinum, for those of you who are kind of new to Platinum, the project numbers now become a hot link. So again, you can click into that and go directly to it. But in the case of all projects, again, this is already a hot link into the project itself, okay? One of the other features, again, so after I modify, this looks like the report I want. I can go ahead and hit memorize, and that memorizes it to the system, okay? Now, this may be my first standard one, but what I may want to do is create a copy of this and maybe adjust it. I don't want to see it by project, for example, or by client. Maybe I want to group it by something else, maybe a parent client, for example. So again, I go modify. And in this case, what I'm going to do is say more, and I can say copy view. And are you sure you want a copy? And you can say yes. And so what is it? It's created is a copy of all projects, okay? And again, carbon copy of what it is. So what I usually like to say is just let's commit it to it. So again, I just say apply changes just to confirm that it does say copy of all projects. Then now I'll go back in and modify it. And so now when I change this, I haven't upset the one that's already called all projects, okay? So I'm going through and again, adjust this. Maybe again, I want parent company, right? There's the parent company, and that's the way I want to group it. And then the client, right? If that makes sense to you guys. And then again, whatever columns I kind of want in, I go to filters, and then the filters, I'm going to be able to set in certain conditions, right? Before I run that report. And so again, project status equals, that'll give me some of the drop down. And I go to settings, and it's going to give me that report name, okay? And maybe I'm going to change this name instead of copy of, delete that last space. And I'm going to say all projects by parent, okay? Now, another thing you may notice is that under settings, it became private. So whoever created it, it will always be private until you decide to uncheck it, and then you can say visible to. And so then I can say, oh, I want these security groups to be able to use this particular report. Okay. Again, this is kind of a right to be able to edit this. So this is a way that you can make changes and still not everybody can actually adjust these for you. Okay. So once I've gone through that, I can go ahead and say apply changes, memorize, and then this is another list in my views. So again, if I kind of back out and do a replenish here, a refresh, and I go to my project view, you'll see that should be in there. Oh, I didn't give it to myself. I hate when I do that. Okay. I didn't give it to my security group. Sorry about that. And so that's what made it kind of invisible to me. Sorry. So make sure that you give it to yourself. So that was totally my mistake on that one. Again, under the settings, when I made it private and then I remade it private, I forgot to give myself access to it. And so now it's kind of hidden from me, but somebody else logging in would be able to see it. Okay. Clicking onto the name is going to give me those users. Sorry. Kind of funny happenstance on that one. Okay. So these views, or sorry, these standard reports are kind of visible throughout the system. Okay. Let me see if there's any kind of questions that are coming up for you guys. Okay. Okay. Looks like no questions so far, pretty straightforward. So again, there's quite a bit that you can do in these. Now again, if you're not able to get this, and then we also have, if I go to everyone and report center, we will also have a list of kind of standard reports, okay? So for example, in project financial reports, we'll have, project budget analysis. And again, based upon my filters, I can run the report and that's going to give me certain data. Let me go ahead and change this to something like all, just so data can appear. Oh, did I block something else out? All types, all active, active. Okay. So you just setting some of the filters as it runs through. And again, this is project budget analysis. And so again, it's going to, again, based upon how I modified this and to get the right columns in, it's going to provide me with the data that follows those filters. Okay. Does that make sense as far as the standard ones? Any questions on those? Okay. So again, not seeing any questions, so I think everybody's kind of easily adjusted to those. Okay. So then we can kind of come into a different one, which would be under Report Center. Again, if you have the right, and we can show you that as well, is the concept of a new custom report. And again, what am I seeing? Is this the default in the system? Yes. Again, most of the things I've showed you so far are the defaults. Okay. And will we be going over calculated columns? Yes, indeed we will. Okay. So again, let's go ahead and again, if I come into, again, if none of the standard reports and none of the views are providing you with the data, we do have access to new custom reports. So let's go back to that again. So everyone, report center, and then we have new custom report. Now the access to the data sets are controlled by security rights as well. So here are all the potential data sets there are. There are some that you want to be aware of. For example, we have 3 time detailed data sets, and this is the one that's looking at all of your time entries. Okay, so if I put time on a timesheet, it's going to register in here. But what's the difference? So as you know, on the employee record, you're able to put in a labor net, right? Their hourly cost. Okay, so in that case, if I expose the time detailed data to just a copywriter, right, they would be able to see labor net. So in this case, what we'd say is, well, use the time detailed data no cost. So this means labor net is not available in that. And so again, they could run that and they would not see it. So be aware that some of the reports, again, we think this is a custom report that you have to give people access to. So again, we don't really hide the data. It'd be more up to you to say this person's able to see this or not. Okay. So here's a really good one so that we can use to kind of look at this. So we'll do time detailed data. Okay. So we're looking at, typical things that I see is that I'm going to say, who is the user? So I can say, here's the user name, right? Okay. And we can do first name, last name, as you see. And then we also see somebody who says, well, I need, how many hours did they work, right? And I also know that they did, how many hours were billable. So I can say billable, and I can see actual billable hours. And then I can also see non-billable hours, right? That's a pretty typical time report, right? So let's just look at it that way. And so when I do the search on that, I get David a bunch of ways, art director, because again, this is looking at every single time entry, right? So that's why this is every single time entry. So that's why I'm seeing my name over and over again. But if I edit this and I say, well, let's group these rows together. And in this case, I'm going to group by my name, right? So I want name, and then I'll add up all the hours worked, all the billable hours, and all the non-billable hours, okay? And I can go ahead and apply those. And now when I do the search again, you'll see that the names are a single, and then I'm seeing their total hours in actual billable versus non-billable, okay? Now, again, I haven't put in any other filters in here. Obviously, I could say, give me the project, give me the service, all this type of stuff. Okay, so I'm just giving you this kind of this rough thing. This is how I saw how many hours did they put in, what was it billable or not? Okay, so then the next question comes up is, well, what percentage is actual billable of the total? Does that make sense? So this is where we can kind of use this, what's called a calculated column. Okay, so in this case, we can say, well, give me a calculated column, and I'm going to say this, and I can't use a percentage sign, so I can say percent billable, for example. Okay. So what would that calculation be to you guys? Is it actual, billable hours divided by all hours? Does that sound like a viable one? Okay. So let's go with that. So I'm just going to, on the right-hand side, you'll see all of those columns. And so I'm just going to say actual billable hours. And then I'm going to put in divide, right? Slash mark, right? And then actual hours worked. Okay. So then, since this has to basically run through a calculation all the time before it does a calculation. So think about this. If I just did this as is, and I just said sum this up, and I say go ahead and I don't want a subtotal, it's a percentage, so that doesn't make sense. And so I go ahead and save, and I apply that. So this one's going to give me probably an odd number. In fact, it gave me an error because it said divide by 0. Okay, that's because again, my actual hours, I may have a 0 entry for them. Okay, kind of doesn't make sense, but that's what it does. And so in this case, what I may do is say, well, why don't you wait until I get the totals and then do this calculation? Okay, so now when I do this and I hit save and apply the changes and run it, there we go. So again, it's saying, well, how much of it is billable? And saying 100%. But when I come into this one, it's saying, okay, 662 out of 941, that's about 70%. Does that make sense? Now you're saying, well, hold it, this is saying 0.7. Okay, so let's go and adjust this. Now I can take this calculation and I can simply wrap it in typical, right? Wrap it and then multiply that by 100. Make sense? So then I can get kind of a percentage. Now, unfortunately, because of the way it is a number, so it is going to say, it's still going to have that .0 type of thing. So again, 175, 170.38 type of idea. Okay? But you can see how I use that calculation to kind of do simple put togethers. Now, another thing that often comes about Okay. So you're saying, well, what if I wanted to do a percent billable based upon a 40-hour work week? Okay. Now, again, this is looking at my entire time. So then you're saying, well, now I need to see my weeks. Does that make sense? So would I just say, you know, do I add in another calculation to say this is that and then also put it in by 40 so I get the number of weeks or something like that and then put it in by 100%? Or am I only looking at those weeks and what percentage of that week was it? So this is where we kind of, it kind of builds into more and more formula to kind of get the information that I wanted. So if you're actually, Jacob, just because again, that would be a little more advanced, if you want to go ahead and put that into a support email, and then we can help you with those types of things. Okay. So just to kind of clarify again, the grouping together, I'm sorry if the chat was in the way. The group rows together is along the columns on the far right, and that's what shows up the grouping function or the functions. And so there's several of these where I can either sum or average or count. And so now you're saying, well, count, that sounds like an interesting one. Now, what if I use count for hours worked? Remember, it's looking at every time entry. So what am I possibly counting? I'm counting the number of time entries. So this would probably not be a good one to use count with. Does that make sense? Okay, just because again, there's so many time entries. But if I went one step higher and looked at task to say, well, how many, so if I look at assignments, I can say, well, how many projects has this person been assigned to? Okay, and I can get that count. Okay, because I can say how many tasks and count the number of tasks. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Now, as far as a formula cheat sheet, again, we always kind of go, well, if we give you a formula, you kind of have to, we need to support it if we put it in writing. Just realize it's kind of a SQL query. So we're more than happy if you put that in and then we can go in and kind of decipher it and see what you're trying at. Or like I said, you tell us, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And then I'm going to say, I put it in there. And you're like, okay, well, I can use this one again, maybe change the columns. So maybe I'll take this one, right? Oh, sorry, wrong. That was my Mac keyboard shortcut. So if I copy this and I say, well, now I want to use it for a different one, instead of actual billable hours, I'm going to use it for non-billable. So I can just click into there and say non, right? Right, so it matches my other column, actual non-billable hours. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, following the same type of thing where I'm able to, sorry, no subtotal there. And so now, again, when I do the search on that, then again, I'm going to get that different percentage type of idea. So again, this is the way we tend to do it is we will give you that formula. You can take that formula and then use that again and again and again into the different reports. Okay. All right. Now again, memorize that. It's good to go. Okay. Now there is another feature that we have. So is there any questions as far as the formula and doing the calculated columns and what we can do with them? So I just showed you how to do like a very simple formula across it. But we can also do like concatenation. So I have, for example, username, but maybe I want to combine two different things, right? So this will be kind of a strange one, but maybe I want to say, you know, just going to say user or project number, for example. Sorry if that's in the way. So if I say project number, right? Even though we have a full name, so let's do this, project number, and then to put these together, I can actually say a plus sign, okay? And then a pound or sharp, hash, whatever, and then another plus, okay? And then I'm going to put in, for example, the project status. Now this is going to make this report break out to be very large, much more than, and I probably wouldn't use this in this one. But again, here I am. I'm just going to say, okay, I want this, and then I want this a dash in between them, Okay, so this is the way I'm kind of putting two fields together, and I'm just going to call it project PN for now. Okay, and this is actually going to be a text field. Okay, and I'm going to group it. So now when I save it and I apply it and search it, okay, oh, see, I got that divide by 0. Okay, so that's a very common one. So let me put this one in. And so this is when we can use a little more advanced, and I can say case when is null. And this actual, because this is going to be my actual, sorry, can't type, actual hours worked, because that's my denominator, right? Worked, comma, 0 equals 0, then 0 else. And this is where we can use these case when statements, and I can say end. Okay, so I have that. So all I did was say, if it finds a 0 in actual hours worked, then just call it a 0. So there's no division being done, just call it a 0. Otherwise, put it in as actual billable hours, okay? Or do the calculation to give me the percentage. And I'm going to go ahead and remove that one so I don't have to repeat it, okay? And that should give me, there we go. So you can see how it kind of broke out my name because they can't group together, but now you can see how putting in that 0, 1 allowed me that. But the main point was actually to get my project number and then the status of it. And so that's how I can concatenate two like things together to get them in. Okay. Okay. All right. So yes, the video for everybody who signed up, your email is part of it. So once I stop recording, it should go ahead and send you an email link. If not, we will make it available through the support group, support website. Okay. All right. So the next thing we can do is actually with a report is once we memorize it, and actually after we search for a result, there is a new feature called scheduling. Okay, so I can have this report sent out to whoever at a given time. So I say new schedule, and what this does is it basically says create a calendar event that's going to attach, basically send out an email that will attach either a PDF or an Excel sheet, okay, to me with this information. And I decide when is it going to send out. So I click on the schedule details. I can name it. So I can say, weekly report, right? Give it a description. That description is what's going to be in the email as well. This will be the subject of the email. This will be kind of a little bit of the body. I decide how long is it going to keep the report. So again, we will be able to see kind of a link of this report, okay, to this report, so I know what was actually sent out to everybody, okay. The start date is going to be, again, when do I want it to start and when do I want it to run. So when do I want this thing to be generated, okay. So is it overnight? Is it at 6 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in, at night, whatever it is. And as you can see, I can see PDF, Excel, and CSV. Now, again, I would recommend if you're going to take it to Excel or CSV, you probably are not going to use any sort of grouping, right? Because you want more of a flat file because you're going to use it to get, further data use out of it or manipulation. How often do I want it to send out? You're deciding just like a calendar event, is this a recurring daily, weekly, monthly? No end date. Even though we can set that, I would probably recommend that you say, end by, and you actually pick a date for it to end or something like that, right? So just so you're kind of keeping it recent type of idea. So I'm just going to say, run it for 3 times. And I go ahead and hit save. The next thing I'm doing is actually saying email to, so I can say who is supposed to get a copy of this. So I'm going to send it to Mr. Copywriter and Darren. And so they will be getting an email with this report every day for the next 3 days. Make sense? And that's ready to go. If I come in to say view scheduled reports, here it is, right? And so, well, this is a different one. You can see how I have some that have already been running, and here's the reports, and I can actually click into it, and it's going to provide me with that particular report. I don't think I have a PDF viewer set up for this one, but okay. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So that, a little bit in a nutshell, is our reporting functionality. Okay. Like I said, there's quite a bit more we can do with those calculated columns and calculated filters. Now, as far as a scheduled one, to help with those ones, again, after I have to search, and that's what's committing those search parameters to my report. Okay. So that's when I will get the new one. So once I have all my filters set and I hit search, that's when new schedule will appear for you. Okay. Now, as far as the timing, right, it doesn't make sense that I probably set a date range to this, because then it would run every time. If I set a date range from, the 14th to the 20th of May, then that will be the only data that will ever be sent. So you'll notice on the filters, we've actually added some filters in that are more date range based, okay, a little more open. So for example, if I use date worked, okay, if I use date worked, and you'll notice that we'll actually have, if you scroll down, this month, next month, last month, year to date. Now again, next month doesn't make sense since we don't report on that. But again, we could say this month, right? This year, today, last week, that type of thing. Okay. So that would be what I'd recommend. Is so last week. So on a Monday morning, you'll schedule a report, say, show me all the time entries or all the, the total time entered last week, and mail that to me on Monday morning, for example. Okay. Now again, these are just, again, they're emailed reports. That's when they'll run. Okay. The other is if I set this to, for example, show me last week, and I set that as a filter on this report and I named it, if I open it, this report, then again, it would only run for last week. That makes sense. So I can hardwire these things in when I just generally run this. Again, the idea of schedule is for people who aren't in Workamajig, maybe to management, they just need a report sent to them regarding certain parameters. Okay. Okay. Have a question saying, can you make a report with timesheets and notes? If that's the billing notes that you're talking about, the billing comments, those are included. Okay, but realize that each billing comment would force the hours to break out. So it'd probably be that I'm creating a report that is probably grouped by the person, maybe by the project as well. And so I see the time entry and the comments that go with that time entry. Okay. And another one saying, can you generate a report only to pull a new report for each week? Again, that was setting this time to say, show me last week, right, type of idea, right? Then every time this report is generated, it would run for last week, right? So next week, if I ran it, it would show me the week of the 13th, okay? Now again, the link to in the scheduled part is just more for retrieval. So if somebody says, hey, I didn't get the report from 2 weeks ago, you could go to that, say, hey, I didn't get that report from 2 weeks ago. I can just simply say, okay, well, show that, let me go into that particular report, go to the 2 weeks back, open it up, and then I would be able to send that to them. Okay. Okay. Schedule report sends a link out, but it is reoccurring each week. It tacks on the report so I can see all the previous, not just the one for that week. Again, under the schedule reports, I can see all the entire list of all the reports that have been sent to the specific people. Okay, but within that particular link, no, it's just for that one particular file is going to be, appended to it. Okay. And again, as far as the syntax and things for the custom or the calculated columns, we don't technically support that. So again, if you provide us with an example of what report you would like and the idea of the calculations that you're getting, then we would again help you to develop that column. And then again, you could probably use that in future reports. Again, once you see the syntax of it, then you'll go, oh, okay, I get that. Okay. An easy one is just, look up case when SQL queries, and that would give you good access to a, a website that will help you in doing those. And again, we're okay with, like I said, helping with you. And then once you know them, you can copy and paste that into your own kind of code, report library. Okay. Because, it doesn't always work on all things. And again, you're stuck within the data fields. Okay. So you can't, that report data set only gives you certain fields. So you can't take two reports and join them together. Okay. You cannot do that. Okay. Now, some of the things that we had talked about is kind of the security rights wrapped around these. Okay. So let's go kind of quickly take a look at those. So under system settings and under account information and security settings, the first one that's going to be here is under the system administration section is the probably going to actually be edit custom listings. Access to this one is when I see a view. So if I go up here into the global search and say, show me the views, that's what's controlling, do I have a modify for those? Okay. The other one is the run custom report. So that just means I can go to the report menu, everyone, report center, and reports, and I can see any custom reports that have been given to my security group. Okay. Design custom reports is actually what gives me the modify button. Okay. Now, once I'm given those rights, I still may not have access to everything. Now, again, if you gave me the rights to design and run custom reports, that means when I go into the report area, any report that I've been given access to, I would be able to edit those. But I would not be able really to create maybe new ones. And that is actually based upon data sets, okay? And those data sets are actually contained within the security group. And if you click onto the pencil icon for the security group, here's the data set sitting here. So again, you can kind of control and say, well, my copywriters, I do want them to be able to create them, but the only thing I want them to be able to create is, for example, using, time entry or something like that. Okay, so I can make it visible or hidden, and by default, it's all hidden. So you have to say, make this thing visible to them, and then they'll be able to make custom reports on their own. Okay. Okay. And there we go. That is custom reporting in Workamajig. Are there any areas that you're, in different areas? Are there any reports that you guys are looking for? You go ahead. If you guys have, if you have particular ones that you're trying to do it. Okay, so kind of coming back. So amount of open advanced billing by task. Okay. Now that's kind of a hard one to do because advanced billing, as you know, is really kind of a top level thing. It's even though you may connect it to a particular project, it's not really affected by the project itself per se. Again, it's linked to it, but when I actually apply a regular revenue invoice towards it, then it's just applying it to the bulk. So again, advanced bills are always buckets, right? So it's, even though I can see if it may have gone to a task through the billing detail, I can see that. But as far as it being open and I only applied a revenue from one targeted to that, that is not going to be possible to see. Okay, that makes sense? I'm often trying to flatten data within a time productivity. Is there a way to do that? So again, the time detailed data may be the way to kind of get at that information. Okay. So if Lizzie, if you can just provide, a sample of how you'd like to see that, just send us an Excel mock-up, and we'll for sure try and create it in Workamajig. Okay. Always trying to understand what labor is doing. So again, there's several reports for labor. So not only is there time detail, if we think of it that way, there's also again under the report center, and even under, just in our standards traffic reports, we're going to have some things. But we do have report data sets that are looking at under traffic, for example, allocated hours, task assignment data, right? So if you're assigning it to them, what task are they on? Did you allocate hours and things like that? So budget versus actual. Also within the project management screen at APM, under, a very good one is assignments. That's already there. And so I'd recommend that you set some things up in here because, again, by client. So again, if I run this, sorry that your stuff's kind of getting away. So I say by this, and this is by client. So I can see who's on it, who's on it, how many hours they put into the assignment. And I can also, if I need to, give it to somebody else, I can click into it and reassign it to somebody else perhaps. Or, again, I can reassign it, or I can make it completed or do other edits for it. Okay. Okay. Need a traffic there showing a certain project status. Okay. And so again, some of our standard, not sure what says need a traffic report that shows only certain project status. Again, that is, again, if the report has the project status, then you're going to be able to use a filter that just looks at that particular one. So again, Deidre, if you just kick us, what is it, the columns that you need? It may be the task assignment, right? It may be the assignment that you're looking at. It may be if you're looking more for time entries, then again, time detailed data tends to show me that. Even if you pre-assign it to a task, and that's back to the kind of the advanced billing. Yes, even if you pre-assign it to a task on the revenue invoice, the revenue did go to the task, but again, it's pulling from a bucket. That the advanced bill is more of a bucket rather than a detail towards that task. Okay. Can you join data from different data sets in one report? The only way to do that is through the API. And so you'd have to use something like Power BI to get that done. On every report, there under the settings, if you scroll down, there's going to be an API access key. Okay. That is the code that you can use to create a JSON file where you can combine, multiple data sets into, into one report, but it'd be doing it outside the system. Okay, so looking for a report that will take the project estimate, subtract out estimated out-of-pockets, and subtract any gross billing that has occurred. Yes, the project listing screen can do that. If not, the project summary data set would also be able to kind of do that. Again, if we were looking at top level numbers, then we can probably do the calculations on that. Okay. Do you have a listing that shows what is included in each data set? I'm going to say no. We used to have something that was very clear with that, but we keep adding fields and changing things around, so it was becoming a little bit of a hardship to do that. Like I said, the easiest way is just send us, what is it you're looking for, and we can give you some recommendations. Okay. Filters do not work for me, so will it send to you? I'm not sure what, Theodore, what does that mean? Okay. Oh, oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. If you find that when you put in a filter or any report is, really just tell us what it is and what you're expecting to see. We usually will ask, can you give me an example of where the data should be? So for example, if you said, I just want to know how much we billed the client. Well, can you show me an invoice that we know is to the client? So then we can kind of see how is that formed. Does that make sense? So that invoice, is there detail? Is it time and materials or is it fixed fee? This is going to, we have to maybe look in different areas to see the information. Okay. So it's always best to kind of give us an example so we can, when we create the report, it's like this report, this invoice should be in there. So then when I run it, I can make sure that it is in there. Okay, then I can kind of extrapolate and say that this is working for you. Okay. Again, question, can you make a report with timesheets and notes? And yes, you can, as long as the notes, like I said, is the billing comments is what you're saying. So when I put in a time entry for an hour, I can say, I worked with, I worked on updating the website, blah, 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 blah. And that would be in the time detail data set. Okay. Some of the campaign reporting, that is there. We can see it. Campaign budget hours at service, I believe we do have that. And the hours worked. Again, but it would be more along this line that it's more the, we can see kind of the gross numbers. It'd be more along the lines we're looking at the projects for the roll up. And so sometimes we can kind of trick the system to kind of roll things up to the campaign level to get the actual hours type of thing. So yeah, Fiorella, if you would just send this in a note, I can take a look at that and kind of develop that out. Okay. Like I said, for the calculated columns, these are things that are kind of, we semi-support, right? But again, if we make it totally available or we document it, then again, we kind of have to support all of that. And we see some crazy stuff. So again, we prefer that you just keep it simple as far as the calculated columns. Again, field minus field, give me a number. Field plus field, give me a number. Those simple kind of, mathematical methods to get your formulas, right? And then if you need to, start getting into more case one type of things, then again, we can help you with those. Okay. Okay. So just a quick request to say, well, how can I create a report that's looking at those time and so I'll go to everyone and report center, and I'm pretty sure I have a time detail one here. Okay, so just looking at time detail. And so if I put in, again, username. So this is somebody asked, where can I get the comments? So I'm going to say username, and I can say task, right? There's the task name. Here's actual hours worked, and I can say comments. And so that would be the billing comments that are coming in. I'll just go ahead and apply that in search, and you can see there's my time entry with the billing comment. Now, how can I roll this? Of course, this is saying I probably transferred this time. That's why I'm getting a negative 1.5, right? But you can say, see how those come through. Now, I couldn't group. I can't mash these together per se, because again, the comments is what's going to make it break out to be on its own when it comes to grouping. Does that make sense, Beth? Okay. Like I said, so again, the reporting function is pretty robust. There's quite a bit that we can do. Like I said, best thing is, show us your reports. Give us the idea of why you're using it. And again, if we don't have it, we may want to create it. Or again, it's just like, oh, that's not going to be possible. It just depends on what you're looking for, but at least give us the first crack. We may even say, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to run 2 Excel reports and pull it out to Excel and then do a pivot table on it, or use the API and something like, Power BI to rip out the JSON file and, combine those into your report function or crystal report, something like that. Okay. Now, it says, I'm looking for a balance sheet report, but our fiscal year is August to July 1st next year. I want to be able to choose the fiscal year. Okay. Now, again, the report should say fiscal year, and that should respond to your setting that you have in your system setup. Okay. So as part of admin and system setup and under GL settings and GL tracking, you're going to have a first month of the year. Okay. So whatever that is, that's going to be your start. So for you, I take it you're going to say August. Okay. So then when I go to any of my financial reports, okay, so go to accounting, for example, and I go to my, project P&L or client P&L and my date range, if I say this fiscal year, then it would adhere to that August through July. Or you could use custom and put it in there. Okay. Now, some reports, again, we may be able to get a layout that kind of gives me the information month to month. Now, those seem to be a little more difficult. I mean, in this one, I do have, the 1 year monthly. Unfortunately, that is going to be calendar as opposed to, most of the time that's going to be calendar versus the way you want to see it. Okay. There are some reports that we can kind of use, again, that custom calculation to say, for example, if it's January, then give me a number. Otherwise, give me a 0, right? So there may be that way to do it, but when we create those types of columnar ones, then you're kind of saying, well, I'm kind of locked in. The only thing I'd have to do is make sure that, like, I put in a year, so I don't get this wraparound. So every August would be in August, right? So again, I'd keep getting this, this range of information between those dates, right? So every August would give me, 2 years or 3 years worth of August. So I'd have to make sure I have a date range one that kind of restricts it between August of 2019 to July of 2020, for example. Can you run reports by quarter? Again, sometimes they use fiscal quarter. That's in our standard reports. Again, there may be some tricks on some other locations where you can say, can it, run it for, month equals this plus 3, okay, type of idea, okay. But this, again, running it quarter by quarter, again, there are some reports we can kind of put into the system to kind of pull those out. But otherwise, again, if I'm doing date ranges, that is by this, I can do fiscal quarter, next fiscal quarter, or look at date ranges. And there are some reports where I can take, for example, project transactions, for example, and say, give me everything that's in, January through March, which would be Q1, and just label it Q1. And then as far as like the corporate P&L, that would be one that we can actually create a custom layout for that would give, where I could say, give me, Q1, Q2, Q3. Okay. The rest I would just say, again, when you say financial reports, it's not. I'm not saying that that's a big, big window there. But if you could just kind of give us an idea of, what it is that you are looking for, and we'll see if we can get that for you. Okay. Okay. Reports, logos, always a good question. Okay. We are looking for 1 inch by 4 inch, but if you make it a little smaller, and that's always going to be in the top left corner usually. That's just the size we're looking for, 1 inch by 4 inch, JPEG, BIMP, PNG. So just make sure it's that small. If you put in a giant one to think it, if you put in a giant one, then we're going to display it. I think you'll see that on mine. I blew up my logo. So, oh, this is probably a bad one because this is invoices. But I did that same thing. Just to let you know. Yeah, if you, again, whatever size you kind of put in, it kind of adheres to that. So if you put in 1 by 1, it should adhere to that 1 by 1. Okay, so the write-off options that are coming on a billing worksheet, those are actually once that's approved and once the worksheet is approved and either it generated an invoice or there's nothing to bill, so it's kind of automatic approved, the transactions themselves would have write-off. And then from the project, I can see the write-off reason for those transactions. So that would be in your normal project cost transaction data or your transaction data sets. So you can see those write-off reasons. And you could technically group by the write-off reasons. So I guess I could quickly do that report. So there's my write-off reason, and I can do, for example, project. There you go. So beyond scope, here's the projects that had transactions with that. Of course, if I put in transaction, it'd break out and give me more detail. I just wanted to show you that, yes, that is available. And that was project cost transaction data. Also, the transaction report would be able to do the same thing because it would have write-off and write-off reason in it. Okay. We have just a few more minutes. Are there any questions? Any further questions? Okay. If not, I'll go. Oh, a couple more. One's just, let's see, we create a right. So how do you delete a customer report? Okay, so this is true with any view or any report, okay? So you have to have edit abilities, obviously. So you'll say edit, and then from the dot more at the top, you'll see a delete this view, and that will get rid of it, okay? And you may have to refresh your screen, and then if it was a view, it'll be gone. If it was a report, then it's gone. Okay. And like I said, again, any questions for reports, again, just send us an example of what you're looking for, and we will guide you to what it is. And we may, like I said, we may be able to say, hey, here it is. Or it may be a matter of, sorry, you're going to have to run 2 reports to get the information. But like I said, just send it in to support@workamajig.com, sorry, and, give us a shot at trying to create it. Again, for the scheduled reports, I know there's a lot of management that wants to get certain reports. Let's see if we can get that. So maybe take away a little bit of that manipulation in Excel. Maybe we can get you the information to be directly sent out to your management. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for your time today. And sorry for the delay in getting it, started up. I appreciate that you guys came back. And again, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact us. Really appreciate it. You all have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye now.